If I think that you should die, you will die. I'd be happy to slaughter you. Until the last pusher and the last drug lord are... I will never allow any military man or police to go to jail unjustly for performing his duties.
Rodrigo Duterte, the 16th Philippine president, is turning 77 today. It's his last birthday while in office. Nicknamed Digong, he was born in 1945 into a family closely tied to local politics. His father was once a provincial governor, while his mother worked as a public school teacher. The younger Duterte trained as a lawyer and rose to become a state prosecutor. He entered politics when he was appointed officer in charge, vice mayor of Davao City by President Corazon Aquino after the 1986 People Power Revolution that toppled the Marcos dictatorship. Since then, he ran as mayor of Davao, for which he was elected for almost 2 decades. Under his mayoral stint, he gained a reputation for making Davao City one of the safest in the Philippines by fighting criminality and corruption. In 2015, he was prodded by his supporters to pursue the presidency. When he accepted the challenge and embarked on a presidential campaign, he made headlines over some of his remarks, including his promise of killing criminals and eradicating the illegal drug trade in 3 to 6 months.
I will get rid of drugs, suppress crime, stop corruption in government in a matter of 3 to 6 months.
He even said in a televised debate that he would kill his own children if they took drugs.
Kaaway mong illegal na droga, anong gagawin nyo sakaling malaman po ninyo na isa sa mga anak nyo ay gumagamit ng illegal na droga?
Patayin mo.
May anak po ba kayong nalulong o gumamit ng illegal na droga?
Everything is okay. Everybody is okay, sir. My order is, even if it is a member, kill him. Kill him.
Despite criticism, he became more popular. He successfully painted a strongman image, a candidate who will do what is necessary to get things done. He slammed the erosion of faith and trust in government and rode on a populist wave by promising real change and transparency to the country of more than 110 million people. And his promise of replicating Davao City's anti-crime efforts on a national level catapulted him to the presidency. On May 30, 2016, the 16th Congress of the Philippines proclaimed Duterte as president-elect after topping the official count with over 16.6 million votes, 6.6 million more than his closest rival, Mar Rojas. He assumed office on June 30, 2016. At the age of 71, he was the oldest Filipino and first Mindanaoan ever elected to the presidency and the first local chief executive to get elected straight to the office of the president.
Rodrigo Roa Duterte,
do solemnly swear
no leader, however strong, can succeed at anything of national importance or significance unless he has the support and cooperation of the people he is tasked to lead and sworn to serve.
Love him or hate him, but he will likely be remembered for his tough on-crime agenda and drug war, ambitious infrastructure program, pandemic response, and his no-nonsense, colorful language that amused his supporters and enraged his critics.
To keep our essential health services and our food supply chain running, boosting the economy activity and ensure peace and order in our communities.
While seeking to eradicate criminality, Duterte accelerated the government's annual infrastructure expenditure through his Build, Build, Build program, which was heavily financed by borrowings. The program aims to usher in the golden age of infrastructure in the Philippines, anchored on the belief that investments on infrastructure are needed to bolster economic development. It also aims to reduce poverty, encourage economic growth, and reduce congestion in Metro Manila. At the start of his term, he identified 119 flagship projects under the Build, Build, Build program, but 6 years later, he only completed 18 projects on the list. The completed projects include the Sangley Point International Airport, as well as the airports in Clark, General Santos, and the new Clark City. He also completed the road network that cuts travel time from Bonifacio Global City to Ortigas from 40 minutes to just 12. On the other hand, among the unfinished projects include a 4-kilometer bridge that will supposedly connect the tropical Samal Island to his hometown Davao City. The pandemic was to blame for the setback, as the delivery of the machines needed for the projects had been hampered by border restrictions. But on the brighter side, the president's 18 legacy projects that had been completed did not yet include some 30,000 kilometers of roads and 6,000 bridges that were either built or rehabilitated under his administration. Nearly 6 years after he assumed the presidency, the government built the NLEX Harbor Link segment, Cavite-Laguna Expressway, Tarlac-Pangasinan-La Union Expressway, Taytay El Nido Road in Palawan, among others. Across the archipelago, about 11,400 flood control projects, 230 evacuation centers, and hundreds of COVID-19 facilities were also built under the Duterte administration. Seaports are also upgraded and rehabilitated, while more than 450 commercial and tourism seaport projects have been completed. He also launched the country's first land port, now known as the Parañaque Integrated Terminal Exchange, or the PITX. To his credit, the projects made provinces and cities more connected, and the delivery of goods and services are faster and more convenient. Infrastructure spending only comprised 3% of the country's gross domestic product when his term started. To his credit, Duterte raised it to 5.3% of the nation's GDP in 2021 and to an expected 5.8% of GDP by the end of 2022. Before the coronavirus pandemic struck the Philippines, the nation's economy was doing well. GDP averaged 6.5% from the time President Duterte came into office. The unemployment rate continued its long-run decline. The poverty rate also remarkably went down from 2015 to 2018. Observers say this could be attributed to Duterte's, of course, increased infrastructure spending, as well as progressive measures that spurred economic growth. Under his term, the Congress, dominated by his allies, approved key measures such as the Tax Reform for Acceleration and Inclusion Law, Corporate Recovery and Tax Incentives for Enterprises Act, Ease of Doing Business and Efficient Government Service Delivery Act, Foreign Investment Act, Price Tarification Law. The reforms he and his economic managers had introduced were seen as crucial in attracting investors whose businesses are expected to generate more jobs for Filipino families. To aid the poor, Duterte also championed social policy reforms. Under his administration, the Universal Healthcare Act, Free Quality Tertiary Education Act, Pantawid Pamilyang Pilipino Program Law, Free Irrigation Law, and Free Wi-Fi Access in Public Spaces Act have been approved. Halfway into Duterte's presidency in 2019, the Philippines was one of the fastest growing economies in the world. The Philippines was touted as the next Asian tiger economy, finally shedding its sick man of Asia reputation obtained during the economic collapse towards the end of the Ferdinand Marcos regime in the mid-1980s. But the pandemic upended all of Duterte's gains. The first COVID-19 case was detected in the country in early 2020. Last year, at a time when COVID-19 vaccines were gaining ground, the Philippines appeared to be on the right track in terms of economic rebound. The Philippines in 2021 posted a 5.6% growth, exceeding the government's target of 5%. President Duterte is hoping that as more Filipinos receive anti-coronavirus shots and with a further reopening of the economy, recovery is in sight.
Mamili kayo. Magpabakuna kayo o ipakulong ko kayo sa silda.
Of all the issues he had faced, the greatest challenge he may have confronted as Philippine president is an invisible enemy, the coronavirus disease. It proved to be a serious dilemma on balancing health and economic concerns, for the government had to decide whether a logical choice is to reopen the economy or close it to prevent spread of infection. It also magnified the country's ill-equipped medical health services, particularly challenged by lack of manpower who could accommodate patients during infection surges. Now around 67 million Filipinos have been fully vaccinated, still 3 million short from the government's target of 70 million by the end of the month, but still far from the 90 million goal by June. At present, the government is intensifying its efforts to meet its vaccination targets and protect more people from severe COVID-19 infection.
I appeal to all our kababayans to cooperate and do their part to help overcome this pandemic. The government cannot do this alone, and we need your active participation by getting vaccinated and strictly following the minimum health standards.
Even before the pandemic hit the country, Duterte is no stranger to natural calamities or man-made disasters, albeit on a smaller scale. On top of typhoons, the commander-in-chief in 2017 dealt with the 5-month-long armed conflict in Marawi City in Lanao del Sur, now considered the longest urban battle in the modern history of the country. Maute Group, an extremist alliance allied with ISIS, launched a takeover of Marawi in May 2017, taking government troops by surprise. The Philippine military waged ground assaults and airstrikes to defeat them, leaving a trail of destruction in the city, known for its rich cultural and architectural heritage. The government made significant progress in the rehabilitation of Marawi, though many residents are still grappling with poverty. A lawyer, former prosecutor, and longtime mayor, Duterte built an entire election campaign on an anti-crime agenda. Since Duterte assumed office in 2016, authorities conducted over 226,000 anti-narcotics operations, seized an estimated 75.35 billion peso worth of illegal drugs, arrested 14,000 high-profile targets, and dismantled about 1,026 dens and clandestine laboratories based on government data. At least 6,000 suspected drug peddlers have been killed by the police in what they called legitimate sting operations after suspects purportedly resisted arrest. Despite international pressure, Duterte continued with his crusade against illegal drugs. He even increased the salaries of soldiers and policemen and appointed them in civilian posts. He also signed into law the landmark Bangsamoro Organic Law, the culmination of the peace deal signed between the Moro Islamic Liberation Front and Duterte's predecessors, which was perceived to pave the way for lasting peace in Mindanao. To fight corruption, Duterte also formed the Presidential Anti-Corruption Commission and created task forces to probe agencies, particularly the Bureau of Customs and the Philippine Health Insurance Corporation. In various instances, however, he admitted fatigue as illegal drugs, communist insurgency, and corruption in the government remained.
Maituturing na isang matagumpay at produktibo ang 5-day official visit ni Pangulong Rodrigo Duterte sa China. Isa sa pinaka-naging sentro dito ay ang bilateral meeting nila ni Chinese President Xi Jinping.
Also among the issues that hounded the Duterte administration include his handling of the West Philippine Sea issue. In the past 6 years, China retained its aggressive posture in the highly contested waters, having various incursions into Philippine territory that prompted the government to fire off diplomatic protests. Duterte tiptoed in the issue as he repeatedly said that the country could not risk having trouble with China. Instead, he sought cordial ties with Beijing for foreign investments and loans. His moves were anchored on his independent foreign policy, the belief that the nation should be a friend to all and enemy to none. Duterte will go down in history as the most popular post-Marcos president. Compared to his three predecessors, the first Mindanaoan chief executive has kept his approval ratings above 70% based on Pulse Asia surveys, and his net satisfaction ratings not lower than positive 45, which counts as good. He is leaving Malacanang with a towering feeling.